Hey guys, how's it going? So today we're setting up a drip system to the containers on either side of our greenhouse doors. We're going to be tapping into a faucet, so I thought it might be helpful to show you all the different parts that we are going to be using, which has evolved over the years. The more we do it, the more we learn what kind of parts we need to make it work the best. So you can see I've got 9 pots on either side, and this is where the water originates, right here inside the greenhouse. So for those of you who have a similar setup, like you are putting pots on either side of your garage door or on either side of your front door, I'm hoping that this is helpful information to you guys. And everybody's situation is going to be a little bit different because you might be running yours where you have a concrete floor. We have gravel here, which is a little bit easier to manipulate tubing through, but we'll talk through some of those different things. So let's look at all the parts. So we've got a lot of parts sitting back here, and I don't want this to be confusing, but I do want to explain that I am just showing a way to set up a drip system. There are many different ways to do it and different kind of configurations, and it all depends too, like different brands parts will look slightly different, so your setup may look just a bit different from ours, but this is the lineup of what we have to put together to make ours work. We used to use fewer pieces, and then we realized that yes, we do indeed need a pressure regulator. We need a filter on ours because we have well water. We need a backflow preventer from preventing anything to get back up in our system. So you know, over time, our system has kind of elongated, but we have much more success with it now than we previously did. Aaron did mic up too, just in case I explained some of this wrong, because he's usually the one messing with this stuff, and I've got kind of a cursory knowledge of this whole process here. So what you normally start off with is some way to split your water at your faucet, because oftentimes we want to still use our hose and then have our drip system hooked up to the same faucet. So in that case, you can go a couple of different routes. There's a splitter like this. This one is from Dram. So you can take off in one direction with your drip system, and then you can hook your hose right here. There's also timers where you can hook it straight to your faucet and kind of bypass the splitter thing, like the extra piece, and you can split it at this level. So you can come along and hit the faucet button and use it as a regular hose while the other side has your drip system. And some of the timers will even have like 4 outputs, so it just kind of depends on how much you want to use that particular faucet that you have. But we start with this splitter, and then we come down to our timer, which, you guys, if you are setting up a drip system to your containers, I highly recommend a timer. They're inexpensive, and for what they give back, I mean, there probably are expensive ones out there. Like there are ones you can use like with your phone, right?
Yeah,
Wi-Fi.
right. Yep.
And you can control everything from your phone, which is handy to do too, but you don't have to have that. You can have something very simple like this, and that way you can set your drips to turn on at a certain time every day and then turn off, so you can go on vacation, your pots are still being watered consistently, and you didn't have to do a thing, and you didn't have to hire anybody to come check it out or do it. So the timer comes next, and then what we have is our backflow preventer. So what this little piece does right here is it prevents any junk that may enter our tubing, which it's inevitable. I mean, we're shoving tubing around in soil, so eventually like little particles will probably make it into your line, and it prevents anything from coming back up and getting into your water system. So that's that piece. And then what we have here, these are actually just adapters. This is the actual piece. This is a pressure regulator and filter all in one. So it may be that you have to get these 2 parts in 2 pieces rather than in one, but we found this one, or Aaron did rather. So what this does is this prevents anything from our well, because when you have well water, oftentimes you're dealing with sand and other particulates kind of running through the water. It'll prevent anything from getting into our drip tubing and clogging up our emitters. And then the pressure regulator, which is a 25 psi, that helps neck the pressure down to where we're not blowing off any emitters or blowing any couplers along the way. So that's very important. And in order to use this piece, this has a pipe thread on it. That's another thing to be aware of. We have 2 different kinds of pipe thread, not pipe thread. We've got hose thread and pipe thread. Hose thread has more space between the ribs. Pipe thread has less space, and you can hook the 2 types of threads together, but oftentimes you deal with leaking unless you can reef on that thing. Like Aaron can probably get things tight enough to where things don't leak with the 2 types of thread. I can't. I always deal with leaking.
Even then, you're ruining the threads on one of them.
Right, yeah. So it's a good idea. That's why we have these adapters. So we've got a hose thread to pipe thread adapter. These are all 3/4 inch, so we can put our 3/4 inch hose thread in here, and then our 3/4 inch pipe thread in here.
So for clarification, every single hose faucet in the United States uses hose thread.
Yeah.
So it's going to come, everything's going to come with hose thread. It starts changing to pipe thread when you start buying irrigation supplies. That's when you start running into pipe thread.
Now, people need to get together and like come up with a standard.
I know, it would be kind of nice.
So that's the reason for these 2 white pieces right here, because this one goes from hose thread to pipe thread, and this one also goes from pipe thread back to hose thread. No, this is pipe to pipe, isn't it?
Yeah, that's just an adapter.
Because this is another irrigation piece. So this has pipe thread, but we needed one where we needed a female to female.
Right, and there's a bunch of different parts you can use. So like maybe the part you have is already a female, and you can just go directly there, and you can eliminate those 2. You really need to be standing in the aisle and just picking out all the parts that work together for your situation.
That's where it can get so confusing. So basically, like, we have a splitter, a timer, a backflow preventer, a filter, and a pressure regulator.
You should show the filter.
Oh, right here.
So people can see if you need to clean it out. If you start having issues with pressure, that might be dirty.
Yep. Oftentimes that just needs a good clean. Now, another thing that I used to never do, but Aaron does, and it really helps, is use this thread seal tape. So every time you come and you're putting one of these together, you put some of this tape on your threads, and you go like 5 or 6 times around. So let me do that. Hold on. What this does, it just helps you get a better seal. Everything holds better, and you deal with far less leaking. I feel like I have like the worst grip on this piece ever. Okay, so that's probably good, and you just pull on it, and it rips off. And then you can put these 2 together like this, and that just helps seal everything up. I'm going to do that to every single piece that we thread together today.
So if you've been dealing with leaking in the past, that may be something.
Yeah.
Another thing to keep in mind is these washers. So you can buy extras of these washers, but every part should have one. Like, does this have one inside there?
There's a little black one there. Mm-hmm.
There should be one right there. Mm-hmm. And those can get crusty and hard.
Or they fall out occasionally. They'll get loose and fall out, and you'll find them on the ground later, and you wonder why things are spraying out. Well, you've got to have the washer, and you can get these in little bags, usually. Like a bag of 5 or something like that. We try to keep a bag or 2 on hand all the time because we use so many different things. Now, a couple other things. I want to show you this splitter. This one is from Ely. This one's interesting because you've got 2 splits here where you can turn them on and off, and then you've got a solid one right in the middle that will always remain on. So you could hook a timer here if you had...
So you could actually have 4 if you put this timer on there.
And then you could take off in those directions with other hoses if you wanted to. The other thing, if your faucet is really low to the ground, let's say like you put your splitter on and then you've only got like this much space, there's no way all these pieces are going to fit. You'd have to dig a hole to accommodate all the pieces. So there are like little elbows that you can get and put on your system like this to where it will send everything out horizontally rather than, down vertically. So, everyone's situation is just so different, and I'm really hoping this isn't confusing. But it's just that's just how it is. And we've had to figure it out through the years. And every one of our faucets is a different situation.
Well, in fact, we rarely use this type of a setup anymore. Most of the time, our setup is in the ground.
But not here. Here we have to do it this way.
We also, when it's in the ground, we hire it out. We don't mess around with doing irrigation in the ground.
Yeah, in the ground is kind of where we draw the line. This kind of setup we're comfortable with, but anything in the ground, we just don't mess with that. Another thing too, you might be, like you can see here, we're going to be adapting into 1/2-inch black poly tubing because we're going to be going, from either side of our greenhouse doors. If you can get 1/2-inch black supply line to where you're going easily, that's always a better idea than running your 1/4-inch line, because 1/4-inch you can't run as far. There's not as much water. So oftentimes, like, you'll get a kit with a 100-foot roll, which I think you could technically set up 100 feet, like with an emitter on the end, right? And that would work out fine. But the more time you spider off of that line, that's just going to take your distance down by I don't know how many feet. But you just have to keep that in mind. If you are,
if all you're hooking up is 2 pots.
Then you can probably go pretty good distance,
just fine.
Right? But if you're hooking up, let's say you have 10 pots or 20 pots or something like that, you can't go as far because you're just utilizing more of the water. But if you find yourself in a case where you're wanting to go right into 1/4-inch instead of into a 1/2-inch, which is totally fine. Like in this case, we could probably do 1/4-inch, I'm guessing. But for longevity, we're going to use 1/2-inch. But you could just use this. Well, we would need an adapter here. We would need this.
I'm not sure we actually have the adapters necessary to use that piece.
Yeah, well,
here,
you would need a female pipe thread with a male hose thread adapter right here, and then you could hook your 1/4 inch right into that instead of going down to 1/2 inch.
And some of these look different, like this is a female side right here, but sometimes there's like a little male plug, I guess.
Yeah.
And then you put your 1/4 inch right over the top of that.
Yeah.
You should show them what 1/2 inch and 1/4 inch looks like.
Okay, well, I don't have any 1/2 inch out here because I forgot.
We need some for the project.
But there's the 1/4 inch. I'll go get it. But here's the 1/4 inch here. So what we'll be doing is we'll run the 1/2 inch to our sites where we want to start spidering drip off, and then we'll use 1/4 inch black poly to get up through the bottom of each of the pots. I think we'll be able to get up underneath through the drain hole in most of them, and then we'll put it over the side on one. But this is our supply line to the pot, and then once we get it up to the top of the soil surface, we'll use a coupler, which I have right over here, Erin, and that left, yeah. We'll use a coupler like this, and it'll go into the supply line and then into this right here. And then we just do a ring around each one of the pots, and we'll use a little ender, and we'll show you that when we get there. But let me go get the 1/2 inch tube because that's kind of important. So this is the 1/2 inch black poly tubing right here. And really when you're dealing with residential projects like this one here, you're gonna be just working with a couple different sizes of tubing. Your 1/2 inch right here, this is what it looks like. And then your 1/4 inch right here, which we just showed you. Now there is a 1/8 inch micro tubing, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
That's gaining popularity. You can't go as far, like you can only spider off of it like maybe half as much as you can with the 1/4 inch. But I've never used it, so I know that that's out there though. Anyway, so this is what we're going to be running between each, like from the back side of each one of our groupings of pots underneath the gravel, like through the doorway. And then when we get behind the pots, we'll use this punching tool, which you'll find these looking a little bit different. This one right here is nice because you can just go like this. In fact, I'll just show you right here while we're not in the sun. So you punch like that. And then what you'll do is you'll put your coupler into your 1/4 inch supply line, and you just pop it in like that. So that's what it'll look like behind the pots, and then the tubing will either go up over the back side of the pot. If you are on a solid surface with a really heavy pot, you may have to go up over the edge because you don't want anything too heavy, like crimping it. Or if you can go up through the drain hole, like if you have your pot sitting on gravel, you can kind of make a little channel through the gravel so it doesn't get crimped. Or you can put your planter up on pot feet. So there's a little bit of space between the pot and the ground level, and it looks really clean if you can do it that way. And I think we'll be able to do it that way, like through the drain hole for all but one on each side. The big urns, I forgot about those. I think we're gonna have to run this tubing up the side of the greenhouse, in which case there's a couple different things I wanna show you that you can use. You can use these little things. What are these called?
They're called like cable clips.
Cable clips. So you can put your 1/4 inch drip
That's for
tube.
coax cable, by the way, not
like
for irrigation.
Electrical section. Yeah. You can get these and help tack your tubing to whatever building that you're, nearby. And I don't think with our greenhouse you'll be able to really notice this right here. If you're going with 1/2 inch line, there are these little like
U-clamps.
Yeah, that will pop right over your 1/2 inch line right here. Like that, and then you can, like along the base of a building maybe, just so that the tubing's not like kind of making a messy look, that sort of thing. So anyway, just a couple options there. Okay, so I think the next thing I want to do is prep the area before we actually set anything up. So to do that, I'm gonna have to trench underneath the gravel. I'm gonna scoot the gravel away with the rake and then trench with this shovel right here, so that I can slightly bury that 1/2 inch tubing so that nobody trips on it and so that it looks nice. And the reason I have to do that is because our faucet is on this side. So that's what where our water access is. So I'll come through with the tubing to this point. We'll put a T coupler in, and we'll have 1/2 inch going this way and then 1/2 inch going underneath the surface over to this other side. So if you find yourself like you don't have a graveled area, you're on concrete, oftentimes there's like a little, sometimes you can tuck it into the crack in a concrete, like in between two concrete slabs. Sometimes you can go up over a garage door, which we did. Didn't you do? You did that.
Inside.
Yeah, on the inside you can use those coax little cables, and you can tack your drip over your doorway. And then we just, like in our barn, we just drilled a little tiny hole and went out the building. You could do it on the outside too. It just won't look as good. You can get different colored tubing though. And most of it you can paint to kind of match your house. But that's how you can access like over a garage door where it's all concrete. Anyway, let's get this all trenched up. got the trenching done. In order to do that, I raked the gravel back. I realized that we have landscape fabric in this whole section. I totally forgot about that. So I had to cut it and kind of peel it back before I could use our trenching shovel to remove a little bit of the soil. Then we took the 1/2-inch black poly tubing, started on that side and pulled it through like behind all these pots, out from under this door down into the trench, and then it comes up on the other side of this door. And then I used a figure 8 ender when I got to that urn, and it's just one where you can put the tubing through one side of it, you kink it or fold it and put it back through the other side, and that stops the water flow. I did use some of these landscape staples to tack the tubing down into the trench, and I'll use more of them once I get all of the 1/4 inch attached. I just need a little bit of flexibility on the other ends, but in the trench, if you don't tack it down, it would eventually try to shake its way toward the top, because when you turn the water on, it kind of moves the tubing a little bit as the water flows through, and it shakes whatever's on top of it off, and eventually it would make its way up. So this helps hold them like down tight. And then over on this side, which I'm going to wait to do this step until I actually have all the drip run to these pots, but we're going to curve the tubing around the corner here and then use a T-coupler to where, you know, this will have a 1/2-inch piece going up to the front and then a 1/2-inch piece going straight this way, because these are the 2022 recipes for proven winners, which they're doing great, but I would like to have these set up on drip as well as having the capability of setting other things up along this side of the greenhouse, because we do like to do some testing. And then on the other side of the T, or the third side of the T, the tubing will run underneath the plastic to our water source. So as far as these containers, you may have noticed that there is soil still left in a lot of them. So I used these containers to plant bulbs in. We put soil in the fall, and that's all we used it for. So I don't really feel like the soil was taxed enough to merit replacing all of it. So it can be a little bit trickier to run drip tubing up through the bottom if that's the way you want to do it, if there's soil in. So what I do, I've got a plant stake right here. Let me get in a position where I can show you this. Got my 1/4 inch here. So I just run a plant stake through the container until I find the drain hole, which I did first try. That is like kind of magical. That hardly ever happens. And then lean it if I can, kind of ream out the soil a bit. Then we'll take the end of our drip tubing here and we're just going to tape it. Sometimes if the soil is wet enough, you can make a hole and you don't have to do this step. But we'll just tape this to the bottom here. And we're just going to pull the tubing right up through the top. There it is. That way we can still use our soil, and we've got our supply line. Now the thing about it, and I think I already mentioned this, if you're on a concrete surface, you wouldn't be able to run tubing like this right out the bottom and have the pot sitting on it if the pot's heavy, because it'll crimp the tubing and you won't get any water up through it. So like in this case, let's say that you're looking at the back of the container right now. Let me get the tubing out here. What I would do is just tip the pot, remove some of the gravel, and that way you've got free, that you just want that. That's all you need right there. Then you can kind of move the gravel back and it still is free moving. You can also put your planters up on pot feet, which rises your pot up a little bit. I've got some examples right here. You can go fancy with your pot feet. I do have some very fancy pot feet around here. And then you can get packages of these, which are great. They raise your pots up just enough so that 1/4 inch tubing can run out from under your pots, and it also kind of helps protect your surface. Like when you leave pots sitting on your soil surface, a lot of times it leaves a ring on the concrete, so these help with that, and we'll try to find a link for these and put it down below. So basically at this point, all I need to do is I need to run the 1/4 inch through every one of those pots, and then we're going to run it out the bottom and pop it into that 1/2 inch supply line. And then once we get that done, I'll show you how we attach the brown and run it on the top of the pots. Oh, that feels good. How are you not? You don't have it at full power, do you? All right, guys, check it out. They are all working. Oh, that makes me so happy. That one's kind of spraying a little bit.
Yeah, it is.
So we started by running a test just for 30 minutes today. And then we are going to be running it starting with 20 minutes, which I know is going to be a little bit too much time, but I kind of want to gauge how wet that makes the containers, and then we'll probably go down to 10 minutes. But I would rather err on giving the plants a little too much in the beginning, because a little too much once or twice is not going to hurt the plants, but drying them out would hurt them. So I always err on giving them a little bit of extra time and then backing off from there. So yeah, the urns are working. Check that out. Which makes me very happy, because these plants have been in this container for so long that they need to be repotted. They're kind of starting to push up out of the pot. So watering this with a hose, with like something that's not a slow drip, is really difficult because the water wants to run off the side. You can see right here, I think from the front, that I did use a couple of those cable clips. Can't remember if that's what they're called, but anyway, that just kind of cleans up the tubing a little bit. And then I tried to tuck the black tubing into the gravel as best I could. I imagine once we get these planted and they have a little growth, you won't notice any black tubing at all. And then I do need to, of course, top off all of these containers, and when I do that, I will tack this down with a landscape staple like that. So the way you run your brown drip tubing is completely personal as well. Like, you can do it this way, where we've come up with our supply line. We use a T-coupler, go in with our brown drip tubing and just make a circle that's connected to itself. You can come up with a straight coupler, couple into the brown tubing, and then put a plug on the end, so it's just like one long strand that you can kind of swirl around the pot and end in the center. I like to do that a lot because it's a little easier to manipulate and like take out emitters if you need to. You can also put in a coupler and then go out with black poly and use individual emitters like the ½ gallon per hour or 1 gallon per hour. We found that doing it this way, like some manner of this tubing, has equaled better coverage in our containers. So, you know, everybody just has their way of doing it, and sometimes this whole system has kind of evolved for us throughout the years. But you can see over here on this side, everything's the same. It's working the same. I didn't even attempt to tuck the black tubing into the gravel down here. You can see it, but just, I guess, for demonstration purposes, you can kind of see how it all looks. It all connects into the black tubing back there, the ½ inch, and then it just comes forward into each one of these containers here. But this makes me so happy. And then it comes through. Well, hey, Cheddar. It comes through and right up underneath here. Does it look like we have a leak right here? Did I not get this tight enough? There's a leak right here, Aaron. Nope. Nope, it's right here. So we're gonna have to take that off and figure that out. Sometimes you just have these things you have to troubleshoot. Like, we did everything right, I think, unless I didn't get it tight enough, which is, yeah, that's probably it right there. Usually I don't get things tight enough. Yeah, it's not leaking anymore. Excellent. I ended up using the elbow. You can see right here, we got them in here, and I was like, dang it, it's gonna shoot straight out. Like, this whole mess of parts is gonna come straight out here. So we remembered that we had this elbow in the Gator, so we went and got it, and it's just perfect that it comes down like that. So that's pretty much it for this video. I think we'll come back in the next one and get these all planted and show you what we decided to put in them. We're going to kind of do an experiment with these, and I think it's going to be fun. But this, I think, is a really good DIY method on getting your container set up on drip. And if you have any questions, because I hope that by showing you all the different options that we had here today, that it didn't confuse. I hope it demystified more than confused. But if you have questions, please leave them in the comment section below, and we will try to answer as many as possible in our weekly recap video for next week on our highlights channel. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope it was helpful, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.